There were a number of times that we were told to delete photos that we had taken, or not to take photos of things, or there were times when we go to airstrike sites, and what you don't see in any of these photos of these airstrike sites are the dozens of armed Hezbollah members just standing off to the side, out of frame, that you're not allowed to photograph. The ones who tell you that you can't photograph the bodies, which I found interesting because in Gaza they're so eagerly showing off their dead, whereas in Lebanon, Hezbollah was very strict about not letting people photograph any corpses whatsoever.
So did you have a chance to connect with any senior leaders with Hezbollah or interact with anyone within Hezbollah where the conversation was substantively like eye-opening to you, where you were able to see something different? Remember, like you're talking about reporting the news in a way that is truly factual and different perhaps than what we see here in Western mainstream media. So did any of those conversations with a member from Hezbollah show you something and give you the ability to report something different or unexpected?
The issue with Hezbollah is it's such a secretive organization. It's incredibly difficult to arrange interviews with members of Hezbollah and to speak with them. It is possible, and I have been able to meet members of Hezbollah, but interview questions, I mean, they never would give anything substantial. You'd get a lot of repeat answers, resistance good, Israel bad, the same things that we'd hear all the time from different members of Hezbollah. Very few people told us much that was unique. There was very little that we learned that we didn't already know, which, I mean, from a security standpoint, that makes sense. I mean, you don't want to be spouting secrets out that way your enemy could maybe hear them, but it made it frustrating. Hezbollah is a very difficult group to try and photograph and work around. It was quite the obstacle. I just remember there were a number of times that we were told to delete photos that we had taken, or not to take photos of things, or there were times when we'd go to airstrike sites, and what you don't see in any of these photos of these airstrike sites are the dozens of armed Hezbollah members just standing off to the side, out of frame, that you're not allowed to photograph. The ones who tell you that you can't photograph the bodies, which I found interesting because in Gaza, they're so eagerly showing off their dead, whereas in Lebanon, Hezbollah was very strict about not letting people photograph any corpses whatsoever. I remember I was at a funeral, or I was at a cemetery where a Hezbollah member was being buried, and I saw an Iranian cleric who I took a photo of, and then some Hezbollah members came up to me and made me delete it. And while that is frustrating, I'm often reminded of Mao's quote that political power comes from the barrel of a gun. And when a bunch of heavily armed Hezbollah guys tell you don't photograph something, or don't or delete this photo, you'd probably be wise to do that.
Have you seen colleagues of yours ever push back on that, and were there repercussions?
I mean, they just won't let you access things. They'll just kick you out. They'll force you out. I never saw any instances of people like getting violent towards my colleagues, or colleagues refusing to delete photos. But I mean, it's just, you're not exactly in a position where you could refuse to delete a photo.
Yeah. So what was like the biggest image that you remember in your mind that you were not able to shoot because of the force that Hezbollah carries when they, share those words?
I remember there was this one airstrike I was photographing the aftermath of in Jinnah, and I remembered seeing a body being pulled from the rubble, and immediately the Hezbollah guys were yelling at us to put our cameras down and like covering up our cameras. And my suspicion, and this is just my personal opinion and conjecture, my suspicion as to why we were not allowed to photograph any corpses is that Hezbollah would not like some foreign OSINT analyst to be able to determine how many bodies were civilians versus how many bodies were militants. And it's worth noting that the Lebanese Public Health Service doesn't distinguish between the deaths of civilians and militants, and that's incredibly frustrating. So that's one of my suspicions as to why we weren't able to photograph it. And then there was another instance where we were photographing a strike that was near to the Rafik Hariri airport, and we were told to leave. And the rumor that we heard was that there were some other people who were going to be coming afterwards to investigate the site. So presumably some higher in command was coming.